We got a big show. Let's get into it.
Okay, this week in movies, we are talking about the first video game adaptation to a movie that we've had in a long time, I think.
Maybe.
Okay. Max Payne. Only because we've had that question about movies as video games and all that, and now we've got proof and pudding. So this week in movies, we're reviewing Max Payne, which stars Mark Wahlberg.
Well, who directed it?
And it's directed by John Moore, who's a commercial guy. His latest was the Omen remake, and he did Behind Enemy Lines and Flight of the Phoenix prior to that. And stars Mark Wahlberg, and it's basically about this dude, Max Payne, who's a cop whose family has been murdered, and he's trying to get to the bottom of what happened to them while he lays some smack down. What did you think of it, Jeff?
Jeff. That's Jeff. You're like a blind...
I like when you confuse yourself with the fake.
I know.
And I was like...
Who am I pointing at? And then you go, Alex.
I was juking left, and then I was like,
Jeff?
wait, but then who did I start with last time? And all that?
As we mentioned at the top of the show, I really liked the Max Payne games. Played them both all the way through and thoroughly enjoyed the experiences. They're both short games, but they do have, for video games, pretty strong storylines. And I think this movie stays remarkably faithful to the spirit of the games. The iconography of the movie is very much like the game. All of the major locations and set pieces are right out of the game. Story has been futzed with a little bit, and they add some odd, cliched things, but for the most part, it is a very faithful representation of the game. I don't actually think the story and the execution of the film is all that bad. I think the performances are atrocious. And I think the movie dies as a result of really, really bad performances. And it's across the board. So it leads me to the conclusion that it's a director that really doesn't know how to direct actors. And it's a shame because I think there was something interesting there in this movie. I didn't enjoy it, and I think it was mostly due to the fact that I didn't buy a thing Mark Wahlberg said, and almost every other character in the film completely fell flat for me.
Wow, interesting. Okay, you know, I agree wholeheartedly with you. I didn't realize, I couldn't quite, maybe it had been a while since I played Max Payne, and I didn't play Max Payne 2. So I didn't really, I mean, I knew there were like vibes that I got that I was like, oh yeah, I remember being in this place, and I remember doing this kind of thing, you know. A couple good points. I actually did like Mark Wahlberg, but he was the only actor that I thought was cast correctly. The chick from that 70s show, we're going to talk in TV about one of my pet peeves, which is girls who use guns in movies who look like they have never held a gun before in their life.
Absolutely.
And they're only in the movie because they're hot. Angelina Jolie can get away with it. She looks like she's shot people before. But Mina Kunis, you know, like that 70s show girl, didn't buy it for a second. Ludacris
it's not even
should
girls.
not be
I think
in
that's
the movie.
a rule
across the board. Across the board. If you're going to play a guy,
if you have a gun, you have to look like you know how to use a gun.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
You know, in the EPK for this movie, we went to boot camp for 2
training
weeks.
and all this stuff. Well,
I shot.
None of that stuck.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I think because you can't really get behind the characters and really believe what's happening, then it's just sort of like, you know, it felt sort of like a lesser than Sin City to me. Like it was a very cool visual style that was really brought in from the video game. But overall, I felt myself more sort of like than anything else, and I think there were some good action sequences.
It had pacing problems too.
Yeah.
I actually didn't play the game at all ever, but I thought the movie was poop. In fact, hot poop that indeed was on a stick.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see the stick.
Yeah, you got it.
Bo Bridges.
Bo Bridges was definitely the stick. No, the story is, interestingly, the story is the same same story, the same plot, same premise as Constant Gardener. And I think you could teach a film class on how you can make one good and compelling, and the other, way of making it drivel. Like
I remember when
commercial guys sort of take two avenues when they want to make a movie. They either do Little Miss Sunshine or Being John Malkovich, or they do a horror film, or this kind of thing. Where they can apply their candy that they use to sell something in 30 seconds, no substance, just eye candy. And this movie, I think describing a scene can perfectly sum up the flaws of the movie. And there's a moment where in an action scene, slow motion, he's jumping back, shooting a shotgun, and a guy shoots at him, but instead of hitting him, he shoots glass vials that are 20 feet away. Implausible for him to be missing our hero. The only reason why they're hitting those glass vials is because that looks cool. So rather than divide another scene, there's cops in a room, and the cops shoot at him, and he shoots back. That's it. That's the scene. There's no clever way of getting out of that situation.
It's not like The Matrix where you're watching every scene, which is the same stuff happening.
There isn't cool physical choreography with the way he physically navigates the area is cool, like a John Woo kind of thing, or in The Matrix. Nor is there, like No Country for Old Men, a clever way, or Die Hard, or a clever way of our hero getting out of the situation. There's just people shooting at each other. And rather than tell the story in a good way, he just said, I'm going to make this cool by shooting it cool. And that's not cool. So
we all kind of agree.
Yeah, it's
worthless.
Good. Yeah. I don't think it's not as bad as
I thought it was worthless.
This is something you can watch on HBO.
I thought it was way worse than Death. I think Death Race.
But I enjoyed Death Race.
There's a movie like Death Race. There's a fun spirit where it's not taking itself seriously, and this movie was taking itself too seriously. And also the filmmaking in Death Race wasn't for cool filmmaking. It was telling the story.
Having said all that, I think in the same way that the Silent Hill film, there's some joy you'll get out of it if you've played Silent Hill. It's a bad movie, but there's some joy. If you've played the Max Payne movie, it is interesting how slavish they were to the game. And for a game that really wasn't that big of a hit. But if you've played the Max Payne games and you really liked them,
this is the game.
So much of the game is in the film. Yeah. So much of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about movie news in a while, and there's a big piece of news that came out this week.
A hot piece of news.
And that they are replacing. They're doing Iron Man 2, but they are replacing Terrence Howard with Don Cheadle.
Why?
To play War Machine.
Because evidently Terrence Howard wanted a little too much money.
Boys who are too big for their britches. First off, Terrence Howard, you are totally replaceable.
Well, it seems that way.
By Don Cheadle. Also, in a movie like that, first off, did you not read any of the stuff that happened when Tobey Maguire wanted a little bit more money? And they went, that's okay, Jake Gyllenhaal's here. And he went, whoopsies, my bad. I mean, well, how is this the thing?
I don't know. I don't want to take sides in the money argument. Who knows? Terrence Howard could have looked at the grosses of Iron Man and gone, well, how come I did this for scale? We don't know.